We have 4% of the world's population and 25% of the incarcerated population. This is ridiculous because if nothing else, how much money is this costing us?
Right.
All we're doing is producing people who are angrier and angrier when they come out. So we have to be doing something to welcome people back into our community and make sure that they feel like they're cared for and they're connected to people. It's not going to work with everybody. I'm not saying it is, but I can tell from my experience at Highland, when you care about people, it just changes everything.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is the executive director of Running Free Alaska, Lisa Keller. Running Free is a structured running program for incarcerated women at Highland Mountain Correctional Center in Eagle River. Today, we discuss how that program came about and the types of support that the organization is trying to provide to women after their release from prison. I got to know Lisa when she took a job as legislative staffer, first to Representative Andy Josephson 2 years ago, and then to Representative Elise Galvin last year. We discuss Lisa's childhood in Anchorage, the value sports have played in her life, her battle with breast cancer, and her time as host of the Alaska Public Media radio show, Outdoor Explorer. Lisa Keller, welcome to the podcast.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me.
So you grew up in Anchorage?
I grew up in Anchorage. I was born 2 months before the 1964 earthquake.
In Anchorage?
In Anchorage, yeah. My parents moved up here in 1963 from Palo Alto, California. So my mom had a very difficult relationship with Anchorage. She did not like it. My dad, however, loved Anchorage. He's from Montana.
Why did they move up here?
My dad was a geophysicist. He just graduated from college.
Stanford?
From Stanford, yeah. And he got a job up here at Texaco Oil. So he worked for Texaco for about 9 months, and then he went to work for IBM because he was one of the early IT guys. So he could meld those two things together during a really important time in Alaska's history.
And what'd your mom do?
My mom stayed home until my brother and I were about 10 and 11, and she was an RN, actually. So then she went back to work, and so after that, we were latchkey kids.
And where did y'all live?
We lived in Midtown, like University Park.
McInnes?
McInnes and Crescent. That was like my neighborhood, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it before.
Yes, this was before 36th Avenue had even gone through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you had Tudor and you had Lake Otis?
Yeah, Tudor was a dirt road when my parents moved in. We lived in Spenard first, in Turnagain. Mm-hmm. We were in Turnagain during the earthquake. Spenard when my parents first got here. Yeah, the end of our street went off. We lived on Tulik.
So do you think that's why your mom hated it? Like, did she have like a really bad first impression because she went through a terrible earthquake?
My mom was coming from Palo Alto, California in 1963 to Anchorage, Alaska in 1963. It was rough.
So you grew up in Midtown,
mm-hmm.
Went to like...
It wasn't Midtown at the time, though. You know, it was like the sticks.
Yeah. Sort of a remote suburb
it was,
of downtown
It was
Anchorage.
remote. I would call it a remote suburb, yeah.
You went to Lake Otis Elementary?
Went to Lake Otis Elementary. I went to St. Mary's preschool. I think I was one of the...
Oh.
Yes.
I didn't know. So St. Mary's right at the corner of Lake Otis?
Yes. I think it was Andrew Halcrow.
Was in preschool with you?
Yes. All the way through.
Oh, and you went to Windler, and then you graduated from East?
Yes. And Todd Christensen, who owns Titan Landscaping Construction. Who else was at St. Mary's? Those are the two I remember the most. So we went through school all the way together from St. Mary's preschool on.
Any stories from your youth
that I want to share?
Mm-hmm. Give us a picture of...
Well, I'll give you a picture of Anchorage. Growing up in the 70s was the total free-range childhood. And the added layer to it, I think, growing up in Alaska, which was always really cool, was that, you know, you went and you played kick the can at night. You know, maybe if you grew up in the lower 48, you had to come in when it got dark or whenever in the summer. Well, it never got dark here in the summer. So we were out till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. Our parents had really long leashes on us, you know, and just all over the neighborhood playing. And still, all of those 3 core families that were there were 6 of us kids, and we're all still in Anchorage. It's pretty amazing we all stuck here, and we just had that just idyllic childhood.
And were sports a part of your life from the very beginning? From
the very beginning. I would organize races around the block and stuff like that. And I was really lucky. I was like that first wave of Title IX girls. And Anchorage was just open to to girls and women in sports. It wasn't a big deal like it was in lower 48 still. You could do any sport the boy could do. So my dad coached Little League. So I played baseball. And then I was one of the first bunch of kids who had the opportunity to be in soccer through the Boys and Girls Club in the mid 1970s. And so I played soccer and then I ran. And my dad was a big downhill skier. So we were skiing at Arctic Valley. And I also learned to Nordic ski. And I ran and did all those things in high school and also learned to swim at the spa, which is no longer there. But if you're in old time Alaskan, you know about the spa down by Valley of the Moon Park.
Did they have the pool at East by the time you got there?
I remember being at Wendler and taking swim lessons.
At East?
At East High, yeah. So we would get bused over to East and take swim lessons.
So that was a thing where it was part of the curriculum that all kids had to learn to swim.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not so anymore.
I know.
It's really sad.
But I've been talking about it just to put it on people's radar so that they understand that that is something that's possible because we've done it before.
Yes. I think it's so important in Alaska. We're obviously surrounded by water, and then we're surrounded by frozen water that sometimes people fall through. So those skills are useful to know, too, if you fall through water in a lake or a pond.
Did you know women and girls a few years older than you that talked to you about how it was different for you because of Title IX? Or
no, and maybe I just didn't understand, but I definitely had heroes. Betsy Haynes, who's Keegan Randall's aunt, she went to East High and she graduated a couple of years, I think maybe 2 years before I graduated. She was a hero at East High, and all the girls, we all wanted to be like Betsy Haynes. We wanted to ski like her. We wanted to run like her. I just think I was super, super lucky. So there was a coach at East High School, Coach Pete. He was an old football coach, but he coached running and he ran the weight room. And he was getting girls into weight training in the 1970s. I mean, who was doing that? Especially an old football guy. And he really encouraged girls and all of us who were athletes at East to not just do our sport, but to also weight train. And that is just like, that was like 50 years ago. I mean, it's crazy that he was doing that.
And were you the best in your class, in your sports?
If you mean by coming in first place, is that what you mean?
That's what I mean.
I was state champion in the 800 meters my senior year. At the time, it was a state record, but I only had that state record because they'd done a conversion from yards to meters a couple of years before me. So Betsy Haynes is actually, I think, ran a faster 800 slightly than me because she ran yards and I ran meters.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your hero beat you.
Yeah.
Before they converted to
meters. Before they converted. Yeah. So, and then I held that record for just a year. And then there was a runner from Bartlett. I mean, it's gone. That record has plummeted. I ran I think the hand timed conversion is a 2:21. And I think the girls in high school, the top girls are running around 2:12 now. So in Alaska.
Do you follow the sports that you participated in today?
Not really.
Not really.
And it's terrible. I don't really like to watch sports. I like to do sports. And I'll admit, I'm like a very competitive person. And what gets me excited to train is to shoot for a race. So I really have to have a race to shoot for because I like to do well. And with the sports I'm in, there's such a heavy age group component to them: running, triathlon, skiing, all those types of sports. They have a great age group component. So you can feel like you're still highly competitive as an age grouper. But if I don't have a goal race out there, I'm pretty lazy. People don't know this about me. I can be quite lazy when it comes to working out. I mean, I'm just like everybody else. We're here today. It's a rainy, horrible day. This morning, I needed to get a run in. I said something to my daughter who lives with me and is a UAA student. She said, "Oh, just go out. You'll just be happy after it's done. And, it's just a little bit of rain and you get to do this. It's not that you have to do it. You get to do it." And I went out and it was great. Once I was out there, it was great.
Are you training for a race now?
I am. Thank you for asking, Andrew. I have not done Lava Man triathlon in a long time. So Lava Man is an Olympic distance triathlon. It's usually at the end of March, beginning of April. It's in Kona. in A-Bay, for those who are familiar with that part of Kona. It's a 1.5 kilometer swim, open water in the ocean, 40-kilometer ride along the Queen K highway, and then a 10K run on the grounds of the Waikoloa Resort. And I've been doing that off and on through the years since about 2008 or 2009, I think. And when we first started going over and doing that, there were maybe like 20 of us doing it. And myself and a couple of other people, the ones I can really remember are Rebecca McKee and Andy Dino. We were all coaches. And so we just started getting all of our clients to come over. And it became this thing where we were like a third to a half of the field over there in Kona and sweeping all the age groups. And it's just a crazy fun time to have all these Alaskans go over. So I did sign up for Lava Man for this next year, and I haven't done it since 2019, but I'm really excited to go back.
You have to run, so do you have like a very detailed schedule? Like you run on these days, you swim on these days, you bike on these days?
That is the goal. Yep. When you're training like that, the training changes over a period of time depending on how close to the race you are. Mm-hmm. So right now it's what's called base training. So it's just kind of the low level, easy kind of stuff, kind of building on your distance and everything. So you're getting up to around the amount of time it's going to take you to do the race.
How do you train cycling in the winter?
On trainers a lot, but also I like to be outside. So I have to fat bike, and I spend a lot of time just fat biking instead of being on a trainer because a trainer is really boring. But you can do high intensity workouts on a trainer where you set up your own bike on a trainer.
Is a trainer different than a stationary bike?
Well, yeah. So if you're going to do a race on this one bike, you should be training on that one bike.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because the geometry of bikes is different, and a triathlon bike geometry is different than a road bike geometry, different than a stationary bike. But in a pinch, you can do those things too.
So you graduated from East in what year?
In 1982.
82.
First year of the permanent fund dividend.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you used your permanent fund dividend to help with college?
Well, college back then, Andrew, was very cheap. And I went to University of Oregon. I remember the out-of-state tuition for the whole year was $4,500. That's out of state. And so also at the time, Alaska had a program where you could get $6,000 a year for tuition. And for every year after you graduated, you came back up to 5 years, you got 10% each of those years knocked off. So you could get a total of 50% knocked off that total loan. And that was fantastic. I mean, it did mean a lot of kids went outside for college, which if you've grown up in Alaska, at some point you need to go out and explore other places and make sure you want to be here, which is what I did. And I came back. But I think at the time, UAA wasn't seen as a college you really wanted to stay at. However, with my daughter at UAA right now, I mean, it's a good college. She's getting a good education. And she went outside for 1 year for college and came back because she loves Alaska. And it's just been a great experience for her.
You got a degree in political science?
Yes, I did.
And then you came back to Alaska. Mm-hmm. What were you planning on doing, and what did you end up doing?
I am the kind of person who often has had throughout my life has had no plans. And my dad's favorite saying was always, leap and the net will appear. I've always looked for things that I want to happen and then go for it, sometimes prepared, sometimes unprepared. But I came back, it was the middle of a recession. My parents had just bought a quilt store. So I worked there for a little while. And then I went to work for the Anchorage YMCA. I started working there in 1987, and I still helped my parents out with the store a little bit. But the YMCA was great. My dad was one of the people who got that YMCA started. And
I guess the main YMCA is the one on
Lake Otis. Yeah, that was the main community YMCA that started. And I mean, I fell in love with nonprofit work at that point. It's like, this is me. This is what I want to do. I had thought I was going to go to law school. And if I'd gone to law school, I would have been a public defender. I like the underdog, basically. But then I decided I just wanted to stay with the YMCA. And I don't regret that. I have friends from the YMCA who are like family to me still now. And that was like almost 40 years ago that I started there. We are like family. And it just really opened up my, for lack of a better phrase, service to the community, because it really is. It's a nonprofit that's accepting anybody in there. They're saying, hey, everybody deserves a place to go work out and be healthy. And I've really loved seeing how much the YMCA has expanded since I first worked there, and how they're serving the community in so many different ways, including the East High Pool.
Yes, I'm very grateful to the YMCA for taking over the Betty Davis East High swimming pool.
Yes.
For sure.
I mean, we're lucky to have so many pools in this town. It's really important, but they are hard to keep going. There's always some battle over the pools.
So were you like an administrator at the YMCA, or what were you doing?
No. When I started at the YMCA, I started as a membership. I was a membership assistant to the director. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I became the membership director. And then I left for a while. So met a guy and went and traveled with him for about 3 years. And then came back because my friend Beth Edmonds, who was after the YMCA, she was the executive director of Challenge Alaska. And she said, hey, we need a fitness director. You want to come back? And I'm like, yeah, I miss Alaska. Now, keep in mind, I was living in Telluride, Colorado at the time. I'm like, I want to be home. And so I got in my truck in January of 1993. My parents at this point were living outside, so they were living in Portland. I drove to Portland, then I drove up to Bellingham. I got on the ferry like at the end of January, went all the way to Haines, got stuck in Haines for 6 days because there was a storm in the pass, and then got out and got back to Anchorage like early February of 93 and went to work as a fitness director. And so I did that for about 10 years, I guess, 10-ish years.
When was your very first triathlon?
1984.
1984.
Yes, at the very beginning of triathlons, almost. You know, triathlons started in the late 70s in San Diego.
I don't know that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the very first triathlon was in San Diego in like 1976 or 77. Could have been earlier, but nobody knew what it was back then. And then Ironman came along, and the famous Julie Moss crawling across the finish line, that was really what exploded triathlon. And that happened about around 1984, I think.
So you did it in Oregon?
Yeah, I did my first one in Albany, Oregon. So I went to University of Oregon in Eugene. And so me and my girlfriend Gillian, who's still a great friend of mine, we drove up there together and I did the triathlon. It was a pool triathlon. So I swam in the pool and then I think the bike was last or something. It was really weird. But that was my first one. But that was also the same time that the Gold Nugget Triathlon started. It was 1984. That was the first Gold Nugget Triathlon, and which is now the oldest all-women's triathlon in the world.
Wow.
Yes.
And you've won the Gold Nugget Triathlon.
I did.
I was just checking your bio.
I won the Gold Nugget Triathlon in 1999. Yes, I did. In the last century.
And you won the Eagle River Triathlon.
And I won the Eagle River Triathlon. Yeah, I was a 2-time triathlete of the year for Alaska. I think 96 and 99 maybe. But yeah, 84, that was my first one. And then I could never do the Gold Nugget until I was done with college. And actually the first year, this is appropriate since I think it's like the anniversary of the AIDS Memorial Quilt or something right now, because I keep seeing that on my feed. So in 1987, that was the first year I could do the Gold Nugget because of the timing of it. And my friend, Michael Bergstrud, died on June 1st, 1987. Of AIDS. And he was one of the first people in Alaska to die of AIDS. And I had gone to junior high and high school with him. He'd been a very, very close friend. We'd been in the same church growing up. And so the Gold Nugget is kind of tied in my brain to Michael since then. And yeah, tragic. 23 years old. And it was just horrible. It was just terrible. And I did the Gold Nugget like 3 days later. So I was kind of a little bit of an emotional mess on that first one. You know, I thought about him the whole time.
You had breast cancer?
So I was one of the founding board members of the Alaska Run for Women. And that was in 1993. It was a big deal. So you should totally Google that and see what a fight that was between the Run for Women and the Women's Run. And so it was a super big deal. So
what's the difference between the Run for Women and the Women's Run?
So the Women's Run, to boil it down, is that there was a man who had started it. And he had a very small board, and all the money was essentially going to him.
Gotcha.
So that's
the Women's Run.
Yes, the Women's Run. And he had started flying women, professional runners from outside of Alaska coming up here, which was kind of revolutionary. I mean, it started in like 1978, 79, so that was kind of cool in a way. but it was ignoring the local women runners. Terry Pauls said, I'm going to do an alternative run, and we're going to do it on the same day as the women's run. And it became this big, like,
competition.
Yeah, who's going to go to which run? So I went to the Run for Women because she recruited all the elite runners at the time. And there was like 10 of us who said, yeah, we'll run your run. And after that run happened, the women's run folded, and there was some scrutiny of their finances because they were a nonprofit. And then the Run for Women, I think it was that summer, we formed a board. And one of the things I was really proud of is that I got into the mission of the Run for Women. Part of the mission is to promote and support the women athletes of Alaska. And the other part is to support and fund, breast cancer research and programs. So that happened in 93. And then in, what year was it? 2002, I was still on the board. And 2002, I found a lump. And it was right after the Run for Women race, too. It was like 2 days afterwards. And so I went and I'm like, oh, that feels weird. That's really weird. So I went in right away. And this is key. And I was only 38 years old. So I was very fortunate. My gynecologist, who unfortunately has passed away, I just loved her, Melanie McLeave. And she didn't see me, but her PA did. And she said, oh, I think we need to send you in for an ultrasound and a mammogram. And when she said, send me in for an ultrasound, I was like, oh, she thinks this is cancer. Mm-hmm. And then I had a biopsy, and sure enough, that showed it was cancer. But then when my surgeon was Roland Gower, and he had done my dad's melanoma surgery back in the 80s. And Roland and his ex-wife had been friends with my parents when they were one of their first friends in the 60s when they moved here. So it's, again, all these Anchorage connections, So before the biopsy, the radiologist said, is it this one I'm doing the biopsy on or the other one? And I was like, what? But I filed it away. Mm-hmm. And they did one biopsy there. So when I went in to see Roland, I said, hey, she mentioned another one. And he said, oh, well, she doesn't have anything in her notes about another one. And he looked at the films because he was really good at looking at them. And he's like, I think there's something right there. And he saw it. So he sent me back and he said, I think I'm going to have you have a mammogram on the other breast. And then I end up having to have biopsies on the other breast and a few things too. But it turned out there was 2 tumors, and it was deep, like almost on my chest wall. And it was smaller. The first one was 9 millimeters, but the second one was 6 millimeters, but it was more aggressive. And so I ended up having, at that point, I had to have a mastectomy. So I had just a unilateral mastectomy. I'd never had reconstruction, so clothes don't fit me very well, but oh well. And I'm alive. And I had a lymph node dissection. And I had one lymph node that was positive. So he was always pretty convinced that it was the more aggressive one that was feeding that lymph node. Mm-hmm. And so then I had chemo for, 7 months. It kind of got prolonged because I had to take some breaks, and I had radiation for 6 weeks. And then I was on tamoxifen for 5 years. And that was in 2002. Here I am, still alive, no recurrence. Everything's good. And, the survivability rate for my type of cancer, because there's like 15 different types of breast cancer, this is my advice to women. Don't look up what the survivability rate is, because you're looking at statistics from treatments that happened 20 years ago. And so I was looking at treatments that had been done in 1982, and it was like 60% survivability. And I'm like, wait, 40% chance I could die? But that's not the case anymore. It just keeps getting better and better.
You had been part of Run for Women since 93. Mm-hmm. Did having breast cancer yourself change your relationship with that run and that?
I am forever chained to that run now. Since the beginning, I've been the person in charge of awards. So it's kind of funny. I can kind of do it in my sleep now, And I'm also the MC now with Kathy Wistoff, who's also one of the founding board members. She had a sister who died of breast cancer. And yeah, I don't think it has changed my relationship. I'm not on the board anymore. It's just a weekend I set aside every year, for sure. Like, I can't go anywhere that weekend. I think I did once. I did a race that weekend. I'll never do that again. It was bad. So I should have been here.
Let's talk about running free.
Yes.
So how did Running Free start? And tell us about that program.
Yeah. So I remember years ago saying to my friend Cheryl Moon, I think it'd be so cool if there's some sort of training opportunity inside Highland that women could participate in. And then we welcome them back out into the community and we get them involved in all these women's races because we have this really strong community of women's races here. And I think I talked to her like back in the 1990s about this, you know? And then in 2012, I got a call from Tim Alderson, and his wife, Lori, had been a runner, a client of mine. And she said, Hey, Tim, you need to get a hold of Lisa Keller because Tim was interning inside Highland working on his master's thesis. And he was doing a 12-week training program for a 5K for the women who were connected to the mental health unit or the longtime runners. They weren't all connected, but in fact, Winona Fletcher was one of those first women. I'd love to talk about Winona Fletcher if you want to talk about her too. And so this 12-week training program, and he was going to measure the 4 indicators of health. And so it's obviously physical health, emotional/mental health, social health, and environmental health. So physical health, everybody knows that running and doing exercise helps that. I think most people who run and do exercise understand that also it plays a role in your mental health. The 2 others, social and environmental health, are trickier to connect, but he made a clear connection. Like the social health is your relationships with other inmates, your relationships with the CO's relationships with you. They all improved. I mean, it was almost like the CO's got like a new measure of respect for women who are doing something hard. And then the environmental health is just, you're in like a not very attractive building, it's concrete. And they even felt better about the facility. They just felt better all around. And these are all key indicators from the World Health Organization. So he found that they improved on all of them. So it was this pretty amazing thing that the power of, it doesn't have to be running, it could be any kind of exercise. So Tim didn't know anything about training, so he got me involved along with Ellen Brown. She was one of the other first coaches. And so as the years went by, I just played a bigger and bigger role in it. And I went from like the coach to the head coach because the program grew. And then I became like a part-time general manager. And now I'm the executive director because we are taking this concept, which we're still running that program inside Highland. And we also offer support when women come out. So for instance, 2 of the women who have been in our program inside Highland are now on our board of directors, which is just fabulous. And they're both doing so great. And by the end of next year, we're hoping to have a transition house stood up that will be based on exercise and outdoor activity. And so we're actually actively looking for properties right now. We have an angel investor who's going to buy a property for us, rent it back to us. And then we're just building these relationships with other entities. For instance, I was at the Anchor Gardens project on 9th and Ingray yesterday where they're showing how to do lasagna gardening. And this is something that we want to do at the transition house, have some sort of big garden that wouldn't just feed the people in the house, but could also be shared with the community that we're in.
Did you model it on any other prison that was doing a sort of running program?
Tim had read about a prison in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
So he did model the idea of a running group inside prison from that. And then there's the one in, what's the prison in the Bay Area? San Quentin. That's a men's prison. They have had Boston Marathon qualifiers in there. And that's our hope is one day we have a couple runners who would be good candidates for a marathon and could potentially qualify. But then it becomes working with the administration because that's going to go through your count time and it requires an extra level of security that they're not always comfortable with.
Oh, so like the San Quentin guys get flown to Boston, they actually run the race?
No, so count is, yeah, sorry. I'm just assuming everybody knows this stuff. No, they do the Boston qualifier. They have a certified course inside the prison. And we have a course inside Highland that goes around the inside perimeter, and it's about half a mile. And we could get that certified, and then they would do laps on it.
So they have to do like 52 laps or something
right,
like that?
26 for a half marathon, because we've had half marathoners.
Oh.
Yeah, so our fastest half marathoner in there does a 1:44, which is a great community time for somebody. She's run a 2014 5K. I mean, that's a really good community time. But the problem is with count. So you have counts at like 10:30 and you have another count at like 1 o'clock, or I think
So
it's
if you're
1:30.
running for longer than 2 hours, you're going to miss
Exactly.
the count.
You have to figure out how to deal with the
Gotcha.
count.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the issue.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Let me make a little pitch here. We are having a fundraiser, a silent auction on October 25th from 5:30 to 8:30 at O'Malley's on the Green. You can look up Running Free Alaska. It's called the Heart and Soul Fundraiser. And this is raising money to help us really start to launch into developing our transition house. That's a big deal. So I'm going to put that
Oh,
pitch in.
and one more question about the Running Free program. Has there ever been anyone interested in doing it at one of the men's prisons, or do they already have their own programs and they don't need it? Or
Me and two board members went down to Spring Creek in Seward, and it was really interesting because it's just every prison is run differently here in the state. And I thought Highland had the most beautiful track, and Spring Creek has a gorgeous track. I mean, the mountains are just boom right there. There was a CO who was doing it there. Justin was his name. And it was under the old superintendent, but we met with them. We had dinner with them. God, they were just great. And so he was doing a running program there, but it was so funny because he had some of the guys come out and everything. And we've also had somebody visit from Coffee Creek in Oregon, a woman who's visited from the women's prison there. And they both said kind of the same thing to us when we explained our program. They're like, oh, you have a real running program. The gal from Coffee Creek was like, our runners do not do intervals. They just go out and run. And Justin was the same way. He's like, yeah, it's really hard for me to get the guys to run. I can get them to walk and do a little bit of running. So we have a real structured running program, like anybody who's on a cross-country running team in Anchorage would understand, or anybody who's a part of another running group in Anchorage would understand.
I'm not on the cross-country team in Anchorage. So explain us, like, what makes it a real running program?
So you have to really train effectively for running for a race. You need to know when that race is, and then you count back from it. And then you develop a program that gets you to your optimal fitness at race day. And so it starts from general fitness to more specific fitness. Well, that includes running intervals on the track. So you might run 4 times 400s. 400s one time around a regular track at a certain pace. So it could be the pace you want to run the race. It could be a little bit faster because you're trying to develop other energy systems. But you're not just going out and just running. You're actually doing some intensity in that running. And then maybe one run a week is a longer run, a more endurance-based run. So you're mixing the training that you're doing to be the most efficient at getting.
And so when you're managing the folks who are participating in your program, are you meeting with each one of them and saying, okay, today we're going to do this, and this is your goal to finish these laps in?
Yep. We were doing that sort of thing. Well, we've been cut back a little bit since COVID. So COVID definitely impacted us. There's a new superintendent. And we were meeting before COVID 3 days a week. And then they had one day where they were on their own. So 4 days a week of running at the most. But now we're only out there Tuesday and Friday.
Do they run on their own at all?
Yeah, a lot of them do. But if they can, since COVID,
they don't have as much freedom.
They don't have as much freedom. They're not allowed out in the yard on the track unless they're part of a program. So if they're in a program or their house, because in Highland there's houses, you've been out there.
Yes.
Yeah. It's more of a dormitory type situation. So if their house CO will take them out on the track, or if we come and then we take them out. Otherwise, they don't get as much time on their own.
Can any woman at Highland participate? And what I mean is like, do you have some women who are like, I've never really done anything athletic before in my life?
Oh, yeah, easily like 20, 30%. But say that. But it's pretty amazing. And I think it's mostly with the post-Title IX girls, and especially even not women who are as old as me, but the women who are under 40, almost all of them have done sports of some sort. It's pretty amazing. They were on their volleyball team or their basketball team, or, they played soccer, or I've know somebody out there who I coached when she was in high school, now she's at Highland. So there's a lot of people out there who have some past history, but anybody's invited to do it. Absolutely. We'll work with you wherever you're at.
And earlier you talked about having clients. I mean, were you like a personal coach for folks or?
So I still am. And I used to do personal training programs for people. I don't do that anymore, but I have groups. And my main groups are swim groups. And so I have like 80 people in swim groups.
What does a swim group do?
So it's this kind of the same thing. You're going in not just swimming, but you have a workout on the board. So you're working a little bit of your technique while you're warming up, and then you have a main set. And that main set could be something like 5 times 100, a 100 at the YMCA or at East High or at APU, which is where I'm at, is down and back, down and back. So it's 4 lengths or 2 laps. And so you do that at a certain pace with a certain amount of rest between each 100. And then maybe you do 4 times 200 or any kind of mix of that. I'm just throwing out what a random workout could look like, but it's different every time. And the idea is that you're working harder than you would do if you just got in there by yourself and just slogged out laps.
Right. Well, I toyed with the idea of doing a triathlon before COVID. So that was a long time ago.
Oh, you should come do Lava Man. But it's
honestly, I felt like I was, I felt like I just sank. I just feel like I was a really bad swimmer, a really bad swimmer.
Yeah.
There's no way I could do a triathlon because I cannot swim well.
Well, there are some tricks. So I have training classes, which are just the workout. They're mostly focused on the fitness part of it. But I also have technique swim classes where those are smaller groups and it's a real focus down on your technique. And they're shorter in terms of the number of weeks. And that's a good way to get started if you're not a good swimmer to begin with. Men have a little bit of harder time learning to swim than women because we're more buoyant. So we more naturally can be balanced in the water, whereas men, your legs sink. Yeah. You have more muscle down there.
Maybe now that I'm a little bit fatter, maybe I'm a little more buoyant.
You might be. It's true. And you'll also be warmer in the pool. That's the great thing about it.
So tell us about the client. You wanted to tell us about one of the clients.
Oh, yeah. First, I'll tell you about my 2 board members because they are just great examples of why it's important for groups who are inside Highland to stay in touch with their people on the outside and make those connections because this is what it's really about. These are people in our community, and we need to be connected to each other. And the better the connection you have with people with healthy habits outside of prison, the more likely you are not to end up back in prison. Bonnie is one of my people on my board, and Bonnie is an amazing story. She's been out it's before COVID, 8 years maybe, and she's a peer counselor now. And, she has just stayed on the straight and narrow the whole time, and she just loves running free because she has said outright, it saved my life, to have this connection. And she built all these relationships, healthy relationships with people. The other person who's on the board right now, Misty, who got introduced to being an electrician when she was in Highland because the trades would come out. And then she is now a journeyman electrician. And she's the vice president of our board, an amazing fundraiser. And she wasn't with us for very long because she came into Highland, was being held there. She was a federal case. So she ended up out in a federal prison. And then when she came back, she got in touch with us right away. And the women who get in touch with us right away when they get out are oftentimes the most successful because they know they have a support group.
A question about that.
Yeah.
So when they get in touch with you, so you do these runs Tuesdays and Fridays at Highland.
Yes.
When they get out, when do they do the runs?
Yeah. So they connect with us just on a more of an individual basis.
Got it.
Yeah. So during COVID, we were really doing a lot of hiking. So actually that brings me to another Masha, who is very successful right now too, as well. And Masha and Bonnie and I would do a lot of hiking together. So, and then the other coaches might go hiking with them too. So it's more of an individual connection. We don't have a separate running group. They're welcome to come to right now, either my running group that I have through my own business or Skinny Raven has a running group. So
what's the name of your business?
Multi-Sport Training of Alaska. Yeah.
Do you have employees?
No, I have contractors.
But you do have folks that you farm clients out to, or?
No, so in coaching my groups, like Laurel Paterna has been coaching for me for pretty much 20 years. I think it's been 20 years she's been with me now. So she coaches my Tuesday, Thursday, 6 a.m. group. So I get to swim with the group. So that's really awesome. And then my other one who does a lot of work for me is Kaylee Martin. And right now she's coaching all my technique swim groups because I'm trying to keep my time open for other things.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
You said you wanted to talk about one more.
Yes. So we recently had one of our runners released, and that's Winona Fletcher. And I testified at her resentencing. That crime, when it happened, had a huge impact on me. I was 21 when it happened, between my junior and senior year in college. And then I just remember like following it very closely back then, and just because it was devastating to the community. So the crime, sorry, I guess I should not assume everybody knows it because it has been a long time ago. It was 40 years ago. Winona and her boyfriend, there was a home invasion, 3 elderly people, a husband and wife, and the sister, I think, of the wife. They lived by Russian Jack, and it was basically a home invasion, and they ended up killing all 3 of them. And Winona was 14 at the time. And it's easy to learn about her past. It's really hard to talk about her past. It was horrific before she was 14. She had a really, really difficult childhood. And then she was somebody who just wanted to be loved and hooked up with this 19-year-old guy, which obviously is illegal. And so there was all the problems around that. But Winona, when I met her in 2012, was just a middle-aged woman.
She was sentenced as an adult for a crime she committed when she was 14.
Yeah, no, she was essentially given a life sentence. It was like 268 years. And this was before we really understood the brain science stuff, you know. And then the Supreme Court made a ruling on we need to reevaluate these. We can't be giving juveniles life sentences because their brains are just so different. And none of us are what we were like, hopefully, when we were 14. So, yeah, it was interesting being at the resentencing because to listen to other people talk about her, too. Like there was a CO who got up, who's a retired CO now, and they asked him, have you ever gotten up and spoken in support of somebody getting out? And he's like, never, and I never would. The only person I'd ever do it for is Winona.
Well, you said in 2012, she was just a middle-aged woman.
Yeah, just a middle-aged woman like all the rest of us, you know, who were there. And very quiet, private, shy person. She was second in charge of the greenhouse at the time. And then once the gal who was in charge of the greenhouse, who was also one of our runners, when she left, Winona took over. Very responsible person. She exhausted all of her education opportunities at Highland. Karen Jenkins, who was the education director out there for 17 years, she testified as well. And she said she's done everything that she could do. And then somebody who has known her the whole time, I think it's Debbie Fink. I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, Debbie or Kathy. But she had been just recruited into a ministry for young people at McLaughlin several months after this crime happened. And she describes walking into McLaughlin, and Winona was like underneath a table, scrunched up with her head down. And she started to develop a relationship with her at that time. And she said, you know, she didn't smile for a year. I didn't get her to smile for a year. So this whole piece that we don't talk about, and I know it's super difficult to talk about, but is that a lot of people who perpetrate horrible, horrible crimes also have PTSD from the crime. You know, Winona was high and drunk at the time of the crime, and just having to reconcile that you did this later, and it's just very difficult. And I think we as a country don't do a good job of reconciling that and saying, hey, maybe these people, maybe we could do better by giving them some really good treatment for PTSD. And because most of them are going to come out at some point. And Winona is now out. They released her the day of the sentencing, the resentencing, which was a surprise. And she's doing great.
What did you say in your testimony?
I just talked about her time with us. I talked about how the impact the crime had on me. Because, like I said in the beginning, I was like I cannot believe a 14-year-old. I was only 7 years older than her. Like, I can't imagine having even been in the situation to do that. And so I think for me personally, and this is what I said, I found a different level of compassion at that age because it's like, wow, there are people who've had some really shitty lives. And I was pretty lucky. Nobody has a perfect childhood, but I was pretty darn lucky. I had parents who fed me, had a roof over my head. They loved me. They gave me all the opportunities that they could. But she didn't, and not everybody's going to turn out that way, but some people are. There's got to be a better way. Mass incarceration, it's become an industry, obviously. And we know these statistics that, we have 4% of the world's population and 25% of the incarcerated population. This is ridiculous because if nothing else, how much money is this costing us?
Right.
All we're doing is producing people who are angrier and angrier when they come out. So we have to be doing something to welcome people back into our community and make sure that they feel like they're cared for and they're connected to people. It's not going to work with everybody. I'm not saying it is, but I can tell from my experience at Highland, when you care about people, it just changes everything. And most people are going to get it when they're cared for. And they come out and they want to be part. They don't want their life to continue like this. Nobody really does. So anyway, I think we have a lot of work to do there. And then the second thing I talked about was just how I knew her from 2012 on.
So you started your program in 2012?
Yeah. Tim Alderson started the program.
Got it.
I came in like a couple weeks in. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How did she participate in the program, and what was it?
Yep.
What was
Off and
experience
on,
like?
she participated in the program. Once you're working a lot in the greenhouse, it's really hard to participate in the program because you are so busy. But she was always super, super helpful. So if we'd be out on the track and she couldn't participate, do you guys need anything? When there was a race, she goes, I can bring some tables out. She was always there to help us. And she's just a really intensely private, quiet person that I have all faith that she's gonna be fine. And the week after she was released, she called me and I was like, wow, how is it? Are you having some culture shock? And she's like, actually, no, I feel like I'm doing okay. And she's learning to drive because she never learned to drive,
How old was she when she was released?
She just was released a couple weeks ago. So she's 54. So she's there for 40 years. Yeah. And very well respected. People didn't mess with her. The COs respected her. She was given a lot of responsibility there. She's very much a rule follower. So yeah, I think she's going to be okay. So it's really hopeful. And at least the newspaper articles indicate that the family of the victims has maybe found a little bit of peace. I don't know. I don't want to speak for them, but that's what it just sounded like in the article. Because, the family of her victims were the ones who started Victims for Justice. And so that is an amazing organization that came out of that. And just thinking about what comes out of tragedies.
What does Victims for Justice do?
They advocate for the victims of violent crimes. And they have I think they have a memorial downtown, like a tree memorial. And then they give support because I have a very, very close friend who was attacked and almost killed by her husband. And they gave her a lot of support during that time. They kind of come in when something horrible's happened and they're there for you.
When did your radio show, when did Outdoor Explorer come about, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so this is just like the connectedness of Anchorage, Alaska. Charles Woolforth.
Former podcast guest, Charles Woolforth.
So Charles Woolforth was a key person in starting Outdoor Explorer.
In around 2012.
I think it was around 2012. Mm-hmm. And he would have me on as a guest to talk about training. So I knew Charles because his mother and my father were on the school board together in the late 70s, early 80s. And then he knew my dad through all these years. My dad ended up being commissioner of administration for Hickle in the early 90s. And so Charles knew me through those connections. And so he got a hold of me. And then also Charles was a runner and a skier and stuff, and he did training. So I would do these once a month, go on, give a little training advice.
So Charles Woolforth was the host. You took over for him in 2018.
Yeah. So he said, I'm leaving. And he said, "Would you like to host a show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd like to host a show." And then there were four of us, and I recruited Martha Rosenstein, who's the one who interviewed me for the last one. And I had coached her in high school, so she's in her 40s now, and I've known her since she was in high school. And then Paul Twardick, is a retired APU professor in outdoor studies, and Adam Verrier, who was an Olympian who's lived here for a long time, a skier. So the four of us kind of rotated, me and Paul doing most of the stories through most of these years. And now Amy Bouchotz is now also a host. And so, yeah, I think I was doing like maybe one, sometimes two, sometimes three shows a month, depending on how the schedule was going. So, yeah, I did that. 2018, my last show was Harlow Robinson, I think, was my last show in the spring. Yeah.
How did you prepare for those? And like, did you have to recruit the guest? And I guess
Mm-hmm.
like, what was the experience like of?
I loved it because I'm a person who likes to work on my own. I have a hard time working for bosses. And I've had my own business for years and years and years. So I'm really comfortable working on my own, reaching out to people. So we, as hosts on Outdoor Explorer, a ton of creative freedom, so we recruited our guest. And then we questioned our guests. We had all the questions. Alaska Public Media never stepped in. They do it a little bit differently now because and just differently in that they ask you, which is totally appropriate, who's your guest and what is the show going to be about? That's all they ask so that they have some idea. But that was the greatest thing because you just, look for somebody interesting to talk to or kind of keep up on what's going on. I always like doing the policy shows around outdoor activity and also like the access to outdoor. And like one of my favorite shows that I pitched because I wanted to make sure this was okay with Outdoor Explorers. I interviewed Nick Begich and Mary Peltola, and I was also going to interview Sarah Palin if her staff had ever gotten back to me, which they didn't, and she never got back to me. And it was just a show on what is your outdoor life. And Mary and Nick immediately said yes. And it was just a fun exchange of like, what do you do for fun in the outdoors? And so it really kind of showed a human side to both of them. I enjoyed those interviews.
Last thing I want to talk about is how I got to know you. I got to know you working in the building.
Yeah.
So you were staff for Representative Andy Josephson, and then you were staff for Representative Elise Galvin.
Yep.
And how did you decide that you wanted to get involved in that kind of work, and what was that experience like?
The most amazing experience. And I recommend to anybody who has their head wrapped around local politics, state politics, whatever, get involved somehow in this way so that you can understand and be part of it. Because people, I think, have a really kind of a misconception of what happens just because you're not exposed to it, But Andy Josephson, Representative Josephson, represents me in District 13. And we've known each other since he first ran. Our dads were kind of contemporaries, in the political scene back in the 70s. And he graduated from West in 82, and I graduated from East in 82. We have all these mutual friends. So he had an opening in his office, and he just kind of hit me up. And he's like, "Hey, you want to come work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have the flexibility to do that." And I'm putting my political science degree to work.
Finally.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
What were some things that surprised you?
I mean, I kind of had a sense for this, that relationships are super, super important. But I guess it surprised me how little value people outside put on those relationships, because it is really important that you have somebody representing you who can make good relationships and can work with people on both sides. And in between,
sides.
all
Yeah.
sides.
Well,
Is it an octagon, maybe?
Someone wrote on one of the social media sites today, just randomly commenting on my post, just one of those like non sequiturs, had nothing to do with my post.
Yeah.
But this person wrote, "How can you work with people who deny the truth of climate change?"
I know.
And you know what I wrote back? I wrote, "It's my job to work with all my
That's
colleagues
right. Exactly.
about issues that we can collaborate on together and
Yes.
move the state forward."
That's right.
And how do I work with people who believe blah, blah, blah? Because it's my job.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? We are not going to get anywhere if we just like hunker down on either side. And I think someone that often puts this stuff out like, if you listen to this person, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And it's like, no, that's not the way the world works. And I think that's a benefit of being older too.
Mm-hmm.
As you get older, you kind of mellow out on your stridency, I guess. I look at my daughter who's 25, who lives with me, and we get into great discussions and everything. But and I look at her at 25, I'm like, yeah, that's how I was at 25. And then you kind of like have these life experiences that were like, wait a second, I really love this person when I'm talking to them. And they are a fantastic person and they care a lot about a lot of things in their community. So maybe I shouldn't pay as much attention to their social media posts that are really horrible.
Right.
No,
there's definitely some folks who I get along with a lot better if I never look at their social media.
Exactly. I feel the same way.
I'm sure there's probably people who feel the same way about me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. That's the thing. I had somebody tell me once, he and I used to have really big discussions all the time because we were in a space where we were often together. And he said, Lisa, he goes, you're so smart. I just don't know how you can believe these things. And I'm like, well, I think the same of you. So
Hey, do you have a book you want to recommend?
do I have a book I want to recommend? I just read that book, The Ancestor. It is by an Alaskan woman. Oh, it was so good. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Lily Sivulik.
Yes, Sivulik. Yep. I just read that. Oh, God, that was a good book. There's just so many great books coming out of Alaska right now. And this is an older book. I had it sitting there forever, and I finally read it.
So this is about smallpox?
Yeah, it's about the smallpox epidemic wiping out this village and this woman's survival, but it's kind of based on some true stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because it also includes the viewpoint of a whaling boat. One of the crew is black, a black whaler. And so there's this whole tradition, like you didn't know, of these black whalers that were over here, after the Civil War that were in Alaska.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it was a great novel, I thought.
Well, Lisa Keller, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@aklive.gov or call 907-269-0123.